Yeah, welcome back to the Format Podcast. Appreciate you stopping in today. You know what it is. If you're on YouTube, go ahead, make sure you click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you're up to date on whenever we drop new content. I'm going to be working on bringing that out to you more regularly, so please stay with me. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, do a search for The Format Podcast. We should come up. Make sure you give us that 5-star review. All helps in the algorithm. And leave us a comment here on YouTube and on your audio podcast platform. All that helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. You also see my social media on the bottom. So if you want to shoot me anything there, don't hesitate. Love the interaction. All right. So the Broncos have a new head coach. Let's ride. That's what Russell Wilson says, right? Broncos, let's ride, whatever it is. So the Broncos have a new head coach, and that is former New Orleans Saints head coach, Sean Payton. Now, this is interesting because he's now one of the highest paid head coaches in the league, if not the highest, with an estimated reported annual salary of between $17 to $20 million a year. Needless to say, the Broncos, they did their due diligence. I guess they really wanted D'Amico Ryans, but he took the Texans job. So they had to pony up. See what I did there? Pony up for Sean Payton. And this is going to be interesting. A lot of things are interesting, man. This is why we love the NFL. It keeps giving us amazing storylines. So for me, Sean Payton was one of the most sought after guys in the league in terms of head coaching vacancies, just based on the fact that he is a Super Bowl champion and so many guys are not. Obviously, he had Drew Brees for a long time, and those guys pretty much made magic together. And as a result, Sean Payton is very highly regarded as an offensive mind, especially in a league that is just going more and more to offense, and not just going more and more to offense, but handcuffing the hands of defense and defenders. But another episode for another day. And people really wanted him. Carolina wanted him. If Brandon Staley had gotten fired, the Chargers would have made a run at him, which would have been interesting because from what I hear from people in the know and listening to NFL podcasts from people in the know, the Spanos are the owners of the Chargers. They're notoriously cheap and don't like paying players or head coaches, but who knows what they would have done, right? Anyway, Sean Payton is now the head coach of the Denver Broncos. Apparently, Russell Wilson wanted him in the wake of the firing of Nathaniel Hackett. And so, they were basically tied to Russell Wilson. So the key was you got to get a coach that can hopefully bring the most out of Russell Wilson. So this is interesting to me for a few reasons, right? Let Russ cook. Let's start there. So we know that Russell Wilson was a Seahawk for most of his time in the league, won a championship there, went to another Super Bowl and came within seconds of winning that one. Later in his Seahawk tenure, clashed with head coach Pete Carroll, and that was the argument: let Russ cook. And a lot of people were in Russ's corner, saying Pete Carroll was holding him back. Pete Carroll had an antiquated way of coaching, basically relying on running the football and playing great defense, not turning it over. People wanted to let Russ loose. That was the whole let Russ cook thing, and really let him throw the ball a ton, let him drive it down the field, et cetera, et cetera. But when that happened and they let Russ cook, that didn't quite work out so well. And anyway, Russ ends up, forcing his way out of there and getting a trade to the Denver Broncos, where he got within offensive head coach Nathaniel Hackett, who was, I want to say, former either OC or quarterbacks coach in Green Bay. And the rumor is that's why the Broncos had originally hired Nathaniel Hackett, to try and lure Aaron Rodgers to Green Bay, but he ended up staying. Regardless, they get another guy who's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, Russell Wilson. So he gets with an offensive head coach, and it did not work well. Russell Wilson this past season looked pretty much like a shell of himself. Who knows if that's Russell Wilson's issue or if that was more Nathaniel Hackett, although maybe some people would say it's Hackett, being that after his dismissal, I want to say the last 3 or 4 games of the season, Russell Wilson looked better. Not quite like his old self, but better. So now he's got a guy who, again, is a Super Bowl champion and is known to be or perceived to be a great offensive mind. Why do I say perceived to be? Sean Payton had a lot of success in New England, but for the amount of attention that he gets and the amount of praise that's heaped on him, I'm going to bring a little bit of, some people may call me a hater now, right? But I'm going to bring a little bit of objectivity to the other side of the coin. People like to neglect the fact that he had 3 straight 7-9 seasons while he was in New Orleans. And that wasn't necessarily a great division, right? I think they had Atlanta was decent for most of that time with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and those guys, and they made a Super Bowl run. But for the most part, the NFC South has not been a great division, right? So you have that. And then now you look at it, you have a quarterback that's going to be a Hall of Famer that put up video game numbers for a lot of his career. But again, if we're honest with ourselves, during that 3 straight 7-9 season stretch, that's when Drew Brees put up incredible numbers and set some NFL records. But what was that about? That's what a lot of guys like to call empty calories, right? During that time, I believe the Saints had some of the worst defenses in NFL history, so they're way behind, and Drew Brees has to throw it to get back in games. So those numbers you got to take with a grain of salt, right? And so again, if Sean Payton is that elite of a head coach, he's got a Super Bowl. Nobody could take that away. A guy who I believe is one of the best head coaches in history, but will never get that due because he couldn't get it done in the biggest game. Marv Levy. I think Marv Levy was a better head coach than Sean Payton. I do. Coach of the Buffalo Bills that went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost. Now, a lot of people are probably going to call me nuts because he could never get over the hump. So be it. But to be able to do that 4 years in a row, especially with the way they were losing in the Super Bowl, that's an incredible coaching job. But back to Sean Payton. Yeah, he's very, very good. I think he's been overrated. I'm not quite sure why the Broncos were willing to pay what they were willing to pay, but I guess they couldn't get the guy that they wanted, so now they had to pay what they ended up paying. And I guess we're going to find out. We're going to find out a couple things. Is Sean Payton the coach that we think in terms of coming in there and reinstituting his system? Is Russell Wilson the guy that we saw when he was at his best in Seattle? Who knows? He comes to Denver last season and, for lack of a better word, stunk it up, right? Stunk up the joint. He wasn't any let Russ cook guy. They let Russ cook and he burned the food. So I'm very anxious to see what is Russell Wilson going to do this year when he has the opportunity, when he has a coach that everybody loves, a guy who they believe is an offensive genius. But the funny part is, even though Sean Payton had Drew Brees and Drew Brees was throwing it all around, Sean Payton believes in running the football. So it's so funny that Russ Wilson tried so hard to get away from Pete Carroll in his run-first offense, but he keeps running into guys that want to run the football. So, I mean, you're back in the same spot. Let Russ cook, huh? But you took the money, Russ Wilson, so you're stuck in that situation. Now, don't get me wrong. I took the money too, right? But you're stuck now, and you got to deal with it. And the Broncos know that they're stuck too, because if they try to cut you or move you or anything, the cap hit is going to be disastrous. But now we see, can Russell Wilson and Sean Payton work well together? Clearly, they both wanted to work together, and the Broncos think it can happen from an organizational standpoint. So I'm looking forward to it. The Broncos have a great defense, and as long as they can keep that going, I think they allowed like 18 points per game last year. If the offense had at least been serviceable in this modern NFL era, then they would have been a good team and probably had a chance to possibly be the second or maybe third team even to make the playoffs out of that AFC West. So what I want to know from you, do you think Sean Payton is overrated? Do you think that Russell Wilson is done? Do you think that those guys will work together and bring the Broncos back to a level of being highly competitive? All right, that's all I got. Leave your comments in the comments section, and can't wait to see you next time. And I'm out. Peace.